Welcome to the story of episode 3 of Blake. Blake, how are you doing today?
I am wonderful. How are you guys and gals?
I've seen better days, but I'm happy to be here and doing the last episode where we get to learn where you are in life. We're kind of ending off where we left off. Here with Petra. Petra, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
I know you said that things were messed up inside of your background, so you decided to blur it all out.
I ain't had time to clean my office. Must have been.
And is that your real picture in the background, Blake, or is that?
It's virtual, hater.
Okay, I was like, hold on.
You have to call me out like that.
Somebody balling up in there. I see you.
But it looks fairly similar.
Okay, all right. Well,
it's just like Petra. I didn't have time to clean my background.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and blur my shit out. No, anyway. Last time we left off kind of you entering law school, but we didn't really jump completely into it. So we're going to leave off where we left off. Tell us how law school was. I mean, this is a new experience for you, starting law school and trying to get through it. So what was that like?
Yeah. So, I am, and I think I probably expressed this earlier, the, first person in my family to go to college. So, that presents its own set of challenges because you don't have like a blueprint or somebody to walk you through the process and go through the steps. So in addition to being the first person to go to college, I was, of course, the first person to go to law school, which came with a whole nother set of challenges. People always told me that, law school was going to be hard. Your first year was it's the hardest year. Which I took that advice for granted because I've always considered myself to be fairly smart. I didn't really have to study hard. I would pride myself on studying maybe like 3 hours before the exam and winging it. Cramming was my strategy in undergrad, high school. Law school is a bit different because you only get one test. So there aren't pop quizzes, there aren't knowledge assessments throughout the semester. So you get one test at the end of the semester, and you just have to pray that you understood what the professor was talking about, because that is what your grade is.
Now, I had a friend that went to law school, and he said that everyone's kind of competing for that top grade. Was that the same case inside of law school for you, and how did that pan out, and where did you end up landing?
Law school is very, very competitive. So I went to Cooley Law School. And at Cooley, they have a bit more flexibility in terms of their admissions process. So they'll admit almost everyone, but they keep very few. So the first day of class, I'll never forget it. The professor told me, look to your left and look to your right. 2 of you will be gone by the end of this semester. So they do their first cut. They cut the first bottom half after the first semester. Everybody's gone. And then from that moment forward, you kind of sort of have to... keep up.
What is this, Survivor, that they're voting people off the item?
Yes, you get voted off the item.
So how do you know, what makes you get cut from the...
That one grade. that one grade, you will just, it's over. It's like, and
so you're done with law school if you get kicked out?
No, none. Adios. Yes, and those loans are still due. And it was $35,000 a year. So it's not like it wasn't no punk tuition. So So it is the survival of the fittest because everybody's competing, one, to stay in school, two, and for the most part they grade on the curve. So whoever has the highest grade sets the curve. So you're always trying to get, it's called the Blue Book Award, which is the highest grade in the class. So everybody's competing for that, but you're also competing for a spot like a judicial clerkship. Judicial clerkships are hard to come by, especially federal judicial clerkships are hard to come by, but if you get one, it writes your ticket it sets the stage for your career. Like most private law firms will offer you a huge sign-on bonus if they found out that you clerked for a federal judge, like $50,000, and then you get, it's so that's why it's so competitive, because people are competing in law school so that they can get to the top of their law school class, so that they can get that top-paying, high-earning position in law school.
How many A's were they taking? How was it one person that they narrowed it down to, or what was that percentage?
Let's see. I will say, well, at least by the time I graduated, 75% of the people that I started with were not there. Yeah, and because I would say, I think I started with like 1,000 people, and only 250 graduated. I was one of the 250. So in my book, when people ask me where did I fall in law school, I'd be like, well, baby, I fell in my top 10% because I made it.
Oh, yeah. You started with 1,000.
I look out for 1,000, not the 250.
And what if everyone's equally as smart? Could that number ever be higher?
It could be, because I think they're cutting off, I think, like C's and D's. So they're cutting off at C's and D's. So you just have to make sure you're in the A/B category. And then...
Or see your way out. Get it?
Baby, or see your way out.
So what were you? What category were you? You were in the A or the D category?
Oh, I was in a BC. I made a couple of A's. But at the same time, I also, unlike them, I had to put myself through law school. So I was probably one of maybe a handful of people. If that, I might have been the only person who worked like a full-time job. So, baby, I was out there slinging cell phones at the Sprint store to keep my head afloat, because Mama and Daddy wasn't sending no money down to the house. But one of the challenges, like I said, I was working a full-time job, and one of the biggest challenges in law school while working a full-time job, I used to work at when I first got there, I worked at what do y'all call it? The Myers, the grocery store.
Did you just call it the Myers?
The Myers?
The Myers. I was down to Myers.
You didn't work at the Kroger's?
No. It was.
Not the Myers. I feel disrespected. The Myers?
The Myers. I was working at Myers. In the customer service section, because I didn't do well bagging groceries. Because even though I was at the grocery store, I still was fabulous. And I thought I was just too fabulous to be bagging folks' groceries.
Oh my goodness.
Here I am. I already have a bachelor's of science. I'm working towards a Juris Doctorate. No, I'm not. And then you have these people, these uppity people who think they just can plop their groceries in front of me. No, that does not work like that. You cannot give me an elitist attitude when I have an elitist attitude. Don't like it.
I can feel it. I can do that.
Yeah, and I earn my bones, and you work at the Myers too.
What was the biggest trial and tribulation that you had to overcome while in law school that didn't relate to grades?
Right. So while at the Myers, I left my job. I think I was this might have been like the second month, and I was driving home, and as soon as I pull out of the parking lot, I see a police officer pull up behind me. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is weird. So I'm minding my speed limit because I know the police officer is behind me. And at the time I drove I'll give you a hint about my age. I'm going to give you great hints this time around. So I drove a 2004 Monte Carlo Supercharged SS. And if you want to do your math, Mike, I bought the car brand new. So, yes. So I bought the car brand new, and it was a 2004 Monte Carlo Supercharged SS. And my windows were tinted. I still had Louisiana plates. I'm driving home. My home was probably less than a mile away. They pulled me over it was in October, for allegedly speeding. So I was like, oh, well, that's funny. How fast was I going? He was like, you were doing 50-something. I was like, oh, that's interesting, because I don't know of a radar that gives you 50-something. Was it 51 or was it 59? What is 50-something? So it's like, you were doing 50-something. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, let me see your radar where it says 50-something. The two white people got visibly disturbed.
Well, hold on. You said this was in what state again?
Lansing, Michigan.
Lansing, Michigan.
So they left me in my car. This is in October. We already talked about how cold it was. They left me in my car with it not running. for an hour to write a speeding ticket, which at the time I didn't know what I know now, but I know that was considered an arrest. Because you had my driver's license, I wasn't free to leave, and you detained me too long to write a speeding ticket. You can only detain somebody for a reasonable amount of time. Outside of that reasonable amount of time, it's an arrest. Okay, so check one. So I'm under arrest, although I'm not in handcuffs. They come back to the car. An officer comes on the passenger side first, knocks on the window. I roll down my passenger side window. Then the other officer, the male, approaches at my driver's side. The male asks me, "Do you have any weapons in the car, sir?" And I said, "No, I don't have any weapons in the car, but there is," because I just moved, "there's a kitchen knife on the back seat." And he pulled out his pistol, pointed to my face, and told me to face forward, keep my hands on the steering wheel, and don't make any sudden movements. And so now I'm like, and this is before the era of Black Lives Matter. So this is before, and it's also before social media had a strong presence.
Ooh, how old is you?
Your
facial expression.
Listen, I was frustrated.
About 2 or 3 years later is when social media got popping, and you had to at that time in Facebook you had to have
a college email address.
A college email account. That was years later.
Mm-hmm.
So this was MySpace time.
Yes. Well, Facebook was around. Facebook was around.
Yeah, Facebook was around.
But it was in the early phase of Facebook. Like, you had to have a college email address associated with your Facebook account. Okay. And people weren't publicizing things like this. So I didn't know that things like this was actually happening. Although I'm from the South, and I'm fairly familiar with racism, being from the South. But racism in the South is blatant and in your face. I found it to be in Michigan. It was behind the scenes. You had to ask, like, wait a minute, is this racist? Is this racist? I'm not quite 100% sure. In the South, the white people just gonna call you an N-word to your face, so you'll know. You ain't gotta guess. So anyway, moving right along. The man pulls me out of the car, goes around, arrests me, throws me in jail. I'm there for 15 hours. So I'm in jail for 15 hours. I get released it was dismissed pending, right before I was supposed to see the judge, because this was a Saturday. I was going to see the judge on a Sunday because it was a felony. Carrying a concealed weapon is a felony. The weapon was not concealed. The knife was in plain view. But however, Michigan at the time had a statute that said, unbeknownst to me, but ignorance of the law is no defense. But Michigan has a statute that said, any knife on your person or otherwise, hidden or otherwise, with the blade above 3 inches is considered concealed. So caterers who use knives for their profession carry a concealed weapon. When you buy a knife at the grocery store and you transport it from your house from the grocery store to your house, you're guilty of carrying a concealed weapon. No intent is needed because it's a strict liability crime. That all came out later. However, so I'm sitting in jail 15 hours, right before I'm supposed to see the judge, so I can be arraigned. The bailiff comes and says, "Oh, hey, the case was dismissed, pending further investigation." Baby, I hightailed it out there. Here's another clue. Pulled out my little flip phone.
Enough said. Case solved. Case solved.
That's what I meant.
Pulled out my little flip phone and dialed whoever I could dial to come and pick me up, because they had also impounded my car, which was crazy because my roommate at the time that rode right past him and offered to take my car home because I was like a block away. And he was like, "No, do you have something to do this? Because if you do, we will arrest you too." What could he have to do with me having a kitchen knife in my fucking backseat, sir? Right. But it was the threat and the intimidation. Fast forward, that was in October. When you're in law school, you have to amend your law school application anytime. So you sign an honor code. Anytime you get arrested, or even if it's a speeding ticket, you have to amend your law school application. That law school application is also made available to the state bar when you do apply for, to be admitted to a bar. But I'm gonna get to that part in a second. February comes around. I get a knock at the door at about midnight. I don't answer because I'm not expecting company, and you don't show up at my house unannounced. But my roommate, he was going out, so he walks out. It's the sheriff. The sheriff was like, "Hey,
at midnight."
At midnight. That's the element of surprise, I guess. So the sheriff says, "Oh, is Blake Francois home? Because we've gotten some complaints from the neighbors, and we want an opportunity to address those complaints." I'm like, "That's weird because the neighbors don't even know my name, and what complaint could you have against me?" Like, so he knew it was a lie, and we all knew what it was about. So at that particular point, he comes in the house, he gets me, he's like, "Hey, the sheriff's waiting for you." I was like, "Oh, okay, here I come." I come outside. Last time they had me locked up, I didn't have my chapstick. So I was sitting there with dry lips. So I made sure to grease extra. So the sheriff was like, "Do you mind waiting for Lansing Police Department? They have a few questions they want to ask." And I was like, "No, I don't mind." Same officer, the same male officer who was, for the most part, the antagonist.
Right.
In the situation. I should also mention that they took the back roads to drive me like through dimly lit areas, like wooded areas, and he was blasting death metal. Neither here nor there, but I think those were scared intimidation tactics.
Okay.
So same officer parks a block away from my apartment, although there's ample space right in front of us. Parks a block away from my apartment, and now at this time my neighbors have gathered on their respective patios. So they're watching this go down. He comes down. He's like, "Hey, Blake, put your hands behind your back." My mother's on the phone because I have her on speaker. She's like, "Blake, let me talk to him." He's like, "No, you're a grown man. You didn't have your mother when you did the crime." I'm like, "A crime? It was a kitchen knife on my back seat, sir." And so arrests me and gives me a full perp walk in front of all of my neighbors, all of my lily white neighbors. I'm the only black person in the complex. Walks me to the police car as if, I was a common criminal. And I guess I was a common criminal at that moment, but it didn't warrant that. Get there, they set my bill at $7,500. Where the hell I'm gonna get $7,500 for? I just told you I was working at the Maya.
Don't call it the Meyer no more, okay?
It's a bit disrespectful.
Disrespectful.
It's a bit disrespectful.
We don't call it the Carl's Juniors, okay?
I was down to the Maya. Luckily enough, this time I had advance notice. So, my mother and my stepdaddy, they wired the money. Because this is before Cash App, and you still do your math. This Cash App still not an option. They did a wire transfer, a MoneyGram, where you pick it up at the Meijer.
Walmart.
And one of my homegirls, this time I was there for like 2 or 3 hours. But while I was there, being fingerprinted and booked, I'm going through my own moment because I know that there is more at risk for me. Like, there is potential that I can be dismissed from law school. And we already talked about how competitive it is. They cut the bottom half. And here I am, 1 month in, with now, like, pending felony charges. And so, and of course, like I said before, I've wanted to be a lawyer since I was 5. And this one incident is about to, keep all of my dreams away from me. And so I'm getting teary-eyed as I am looking at my shoes, and I'm like, "Ooh, Lord Jesus, how did we get here?" But I look up, and as I look up, I lock eyes with the officer who arrested me. He's staring at me, and he's smiling. And I said, "Oh, that was exactly what I needed, baby. You ain't gonna see a tear fall." Oh, we good here. We good. So fast forward, that was February. Sometime in the end of that month, I hired an attorney. We go through a whole process. He basically tells me what I just, said earlier, that this is a strict liability crime. They don't need intent. And this carries with it 7 years. So we take this to the trial. There is potential that you can get 7 years. Oh, but let me stop there because I said earlier it was dismissed pending further investigation. When I walked out, I didn't know what the dismissed pending further investigation meant. I heard dismissed, not without. Oh, so the prosecutor looked at the police report and said, "I'm not going to hold this man on carrying a concealed weapon based on the information you've included in your police report." So what do you think the police officer then did? They beefed up the police report to make the charges stick.
They did what?
They beefed
up
They lied. Lied. He said that the knife was under my coat, and he could see just the tip of it. I actually reread the police report like a month ago, which we'll get to in a second. And the two officers had conflicting stories. One of them acknowledges that it was the lady, her name was Angela Stitz. Yeah, Angela Stitz. I forgot the other man's name, but I looked him up. I don't think he worked for LA Lansing Police Department anymore. I think he got another job doing something else, so he might have.
He worked at the Myers.
He worked
down to the Myers.
Down to the Myers.
Bagging groceries where he need to be. Learning customer service.
In the knife department.
So they had conflicting stories. His story was so that the charges would stick. And of course, a judge and a jury, they're going to believe the police officer over this little brown boy believe. So what do I do? Probably one of my greatest regrets. I took a plea deal for an ordinance violation, which was basically pay a fine. It's less than a misdemeanor. Pay a fine, go about your business. However, I then have to disclose this to the law school, which created another array of problems. So for the next, I'd say that for the next 2 years, for the first 2 years of law school, I then was in a full-out, drag-out battle with the dean. And the issue was, she had never practiced law. You know what? So, and my mouth was slick back then. Well, it's still slick now, but no, yeah, it's still slick. Un poquito. Back then it was muy grande.
Yeah.
So yeah, I couldn't be told. Yeah. So anywho, so she wanted more information about like being dismissed pending further investigation. I'm like, man, but it wasn't really dismissed. Like, you're not getting what I'm trying to tell you. The actual disposition was an ordinance violation. Well, I want to know that the original charge, there was not, ma'am, there is nothing that I can give you that's going to say that, because that didn't happen. The final disposition is this. I done went down there and gave you all of this. And I must have, she had said something flipped to me first. And I told her, you know what? It's true what they say. Those who can do it, those who can't, apparently they become the dean. That was a dig at her not practicing law. So she didn't really like that. So she wrote me she wrote me a nasty letter. And I told her, I also said, I'm paying Harvard tuition for having a third world experience.
You don't want to go to school. I mean, if you didn't want to be a lawyer, say that.
She was picking with me first. So then she wrote me a nasty letter. This was probably right before I'm about to graduate. She writes me a nasty letter in her letter.
You was about to graduate after that?
Right. They let you through?
Graduate from what? D block to C block? I mean, headed there.
I was graduating from customer service to management at the Maya.
You just go with that bullshit.
So, she sends me this nasty letter, and at the bottom of her letter, she puts, CC your admission file, or your law school application file. I was like, you. My homegirl had to talk me off the ledge. First of all, her and I never had a face-to-face meeting. Through all of our email communications, I kept begging her and asking her, ooh, could we please meet face-to-face? Well, could we please meet face-to-face? Because we can iron this out. I think this is getting lost in translation via email. No. She was like, no, I don't want to meet with you. You need to bring me what I want. And then when you bring me what I want, then I'll meet with you. I was like, girl. Anywho. So she made that available. Another fun fact about law school is, after you graduate, they can recall your degree. They can basically say, oh, yeah, we don't like what you did post-graduation. Give me that badge.
At any time or up to a certain amount of times?
At any time.
I know you can lie. Is this across the board or this is at
it was just at Cooley. I think, well, I can't speak to other people's law school experience. I will say that. Because I know a lot of other law schools also, they operate on a pass-fail. Like, there's not a GPA. Like, I think Harvard is one of the law schools.
Well, they're not third world education.
My God, today.
It ain't Cooley High.
Mm. Next to the Mayas.
Down to the mile. So my homegirl was like, you know what, Blake, I don't think you should apply. Because I had readied up my reply. I fired it. And I went ahead, but I walked it back. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to leave well enough alone, going on ahead, walk across the stage, and going on about my business. In doing so, my last semester, I had to do an externship. So I wanted to do the Innocence Project. Which is, getting people off of death row who were wrongfully accused, because I now have this newfound passion being on the other side of the law. I want to defend those who are underprivileged. I want to speak up for the voiceless. When I first entered law school, I thought I was going to become a corporate lawyer. So I was like, oh, I'm a champion. Baby, the boardroom, not the courtroom. That was my motto. Send me where the money at. But now this passion inside of me is all about civil rights, people's rights, constitutional rights, black rights. And so I was trying to get into the Innocence Project, and the professor who was over it was like, oh yeah, we pulled your law school file. He was like, most people's is like this thick. Why is yours this thick? What's your beef with Dean Timmer? I was like, I never met the woman, but if I see his hands. On site. I could catch her at her mama's funeral. Coming out. So
you said they can take that at any time, right? Okay, I'm just making sure that that's what you said when you said it.
But we gonna edit that part out, right? It's not live.
No, this fully live.
It's
we live.
It's live.
Who said that? So I wasn't given that, but I got a great mentor, and out of that situation, that professor became one of my mentors, and it also catapulted me to get this. Moved to Los Angeles in 2009.
Why did you? What actually happened? Like what took place?
Because I couldn't get that externship locally in Michigan, I took another one at the DA's office, which is the Los Angeles County's District Attorney's Office. So my last semester of law school, January 2009 to May 2009, for those of us who are doing math, I moved to LA. I actually visited for my 25th birthday. Another math for you. Right, like 6 months prior. Visited LA on my 25th birthday, fell in love with it, was like, oh, you know what, I'm moving here. 6 months later, I took an externship. At the DA's office, and I was a student prosecutor. Oh, there you go. Oh, you got excited, Mike. Hey.
Carry the one.
Bring down the 3.
Oh, there's a 3 in it.
There's a 3 in there. And another number is multiples of 3.
You ain't a liar.
I already know.
So then I moved to LA in 2009. Was a prosecutor at the DA's office. July 2009. Went through I was going through bar brief. It's the prep course. I was taking bar brief to take the July bar exam in California. I got pulmonary embolism, which I had never heard of before. 2 weeks before the bar exam, I am in the hospital in ICU with blood clots in my right lung. And these come from sitting for long periods of time, which you do when you're studying, and then standing up suddenly. So I was adamant. I was like, oh, doc, I don't know what you're talking about, but the bar is in 2 weeks. I spent $5,000 on this bar prep class. I've been studying for 3 months. This is happening. Damn you. He was like, yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, and mind you, I'm living in LA by myself, no family, no friends. So there's nobody to visit me in the hospital. So I'm there, and my mother was like, should I come? And I was like, no, don't come. But I wasn't telling her how bad it was.
Seems like you don't tell her a lot of things.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
They're like palm trees right there.
My God. It's like earlier Petra had a virtual background with some palm trees, but I see you got the palm trees.
I do.
There it is. There it is. Can you move that over? How you drag it up?
Just David blamed herself off the TV.
Disappeared. I don't know what's wrong with it.
There it is. So I couldn't take the bar exam. I could not take the July bar exam. Luckily enough, I got a job shortly afterwards. So I've started a good job. My God, still at that job today.
The Farmer Jack. The Farmer Jack.
The Carl Jr. No, now I'm down to the bankruptcy court for the U.S. federal government. So I've worked there now like 13 years. Is that right? Yeah. Yeah. Just about 13 years. So I've been at that job for 13 years. Loved it. I started like entry level, and within those 13 years, I probably have like I've quadrupled my salary, my starting salary, and then I have had maybe like 6 promotions. And the last one, which is the one that happened the longest time ago, or I've been in this position for the longest, which I'm now the manager of planning and research, strategic planning and research for the court. So, I look at our filings, statistics for the filings. Are they up? Are they down? I look up some of the things affecting the economy and try to forecast and predict the filings, because filings is how we get our funding from Congress. The funding from Congress is what we use to hire, promote, or lay off. IT support, staffing support, all of those things circle around strategic planning. So I've been doing that for I think maybe 5 years now. So I've been in this role for the last 5 years. And as I shared with Mike previously, during the pandemic, I decided to revisit the bar exam. And I actually took the New York bar exam. Here's the reason why. Because the New York bar exam is the uniform bar exam. When I graduated law school, there was no such thing. The uniform, yes, in California, and I didn't take the California because California they don't accept the uniform bar exam. But however, 40 states accept the uniform bar exam. So
does that mean that you can practice law in 40 states?
In all 40, including the U.S. Virgin Islands. So I'm getting admitted soon to D.C. So I'm gonna do because you still have to do that background check. It's called character and fitness, where they pull your records and your law school records. You got to explain that. One of the reasons that my biggest regret is not fighting that case tooth and nail is because I always have to disclose it, which is why I have to pull my file from 2004 or 5. Yeah, 2004 or 5. Thankfully, I still have it. To pull that file so I can actually articulate to the bar exam or to the character and fitness board what actually took place. Okay. And so I'm just waiting for my background check to be cleared so I can have my swearing-in ceremonies in New York, D.C., Texas, and South Carolina.
I bet you ain't nobody gonna go buy no knives up until then.
Actually, I'm getting a pistol tomorrow.
Oh, okay. You know this live, right?
I'm graduating.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm doing it the legal way. I'm not, the serial numbers will.
But he also not in Michigan, so 3 inches ain't nothing.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we are now.
So
I'm just gonna sort of steamroll this whole conversation. But
I know I didn't. I'm gonna give you. I'm gonna give you a chance to take a little break because I had so many questions, but I didn't want to jump in there. It was like double dutch, and I was like, okay, he going. So this is really kind of like a powerful question, a deep question, because you were talking about how all that had happened prior to the Black Lives Matters and a lot of the black men and or women that were killed by police officers. For somebody that is a spokesperson, if you will, find a different word if you want, for law. Mm-hmm. What was your outlook on police officers and law during the time that you were going through that with the police officers of Michigan, and what is it now being a lawyer? Soon to be sworn.
That is a really good question because my perception has changed. So prior to my experience, I thought this whole, oh, that officer was racist was just a thing. I thought it was a cop out. I thought people who were crying out for racism, that was an excuse. And I was like, yeah, no, things like that don't really happen. But what I should have said is things like that hadn't happened to me yet. But if you live long enough and you black long enough, you will experience it. Because although that was my first, it was not my last. And so I was very optimistic about police officers back then. And now I'm more realistic. Yeah, I said that. I'm more realistic that all of them aren't great and there are a lot of bad apples. And one of the reasons during the pandemic I decided to retake the bar exam is because I got tired of seeing people look like me being mistreated by the police officers and not being able to fully lend my support the way that I think God has meant me to. And so that's one of the things that inspired me to take the uniform bar where I could practice in 40 states. So now I don't have to just help those who are local to me. I can go nationwide with this. We can fight anywhere. Where you want to do it? You want it in Kentucky? Oh, we good there too, baby.
So ultimately, you're living in your purpose, like for sure, 100%.
And I'm still every day at 4 o'clock, 4 p.m. my time. If you want to join me, that's 7 p.m. your time. I enter into a prayer. You know, they say one or more gathered in my name, I am present.
Period.
And we can also touch and agree, and I pray for all my family, my friends, those near and far. And I also have a special prayer for God to continue to show me my purpose and my path in life. Because the purpose that I have for me may not be what He has for me. And I do believe if you want to make God last, start making plans. And so I'm open to His suggestion, and I want that man to use me the best way He sees fit.
So you definitely poured that in. You said since you was 5, and now you're living your purpose, like your dream.
Yes.
That's,
so it is
amazing.
It has been. This has recently happened in so I took the bar in February of this year. I got the pass in April 13th. Oh, it's essay. So it's a 2-day process. I had to fly to New York, Buffalo. Ooh, put a finger here. Buffalo, New York in February. God got a sense of humor because He know how I cut up in Michigan. And here it is, negative 18 degrees. And here it is, negative 18 degrees, and you got me flying across here. Niagara Falls is frozen. What am I supposed to do? Go take that, bug. Hello, very bad.
It's an interesting thing that you said, and I couldn't develop a question from it, and maybe Petra can help me develop it. But the thing that you had said stood out more recently to me. It hit hard when you had said about how you felt one way, and it changed when it happened to you. I think that people in the world, that's a very don't take it the wrong way, because I'm human too. It's a very ignorant way of thinking, because
I'm gonna change that word ignorant, naive. Although I don't take offense to the word ignorant, because ignorant means not knowing everything. And so to a certain degree, we all are ignorant. So I do agree with you. But for the other listeners, we can say ignorant, but yeah, well, you can still say ignorant.
I say it because it applies to everybody. It's an ignorant way where we have a one-track mind. And especially now in this day, I mean, however you feel or however you think, you stay so committed to that idea until it happens to you, and then that becomes something that changes your idea. And correct. I feel like we as people need to have an openness towards everything than just a solidified thought of our own.
And I will say, so Mike, that's a good point, and that's why I brought up the fact that, in which I want to reiterate, that social media wasn't around back then. So you didn't get the coverage. So it wasn't just that, like, oh, I didn't think that this could happen to me because of who I am, or it didn't happen. There was no coverage of this happening. There was this wasn't played on the news.
No previous experiences of you.
Yeah, so you had this was new. So yes, you're exactly right. Completely ignorant because no one covered it. Now we have platforms in place where this gets the attention that it deserves. So I think moving forward, none of us can deny that this is somebody's experience. Had it not happened to me, and let's say today being today's time, I would still look at other people's experience and all of the cumulative experience and think like, well, yeah, they have to be right. I mean, all these people can't be making these things up, as opposed to back then there wasn't the coverage, which I am grateful for the coverage today because it has shined a light on it for myself and then for others. But even before the light was shined on it for others to receive, I received it in a different way.
I have, I am Petra. I don't know if you have another question as we're wrapping up soon, but I have another powerful question for you.
Oh, I love these.
I'm in a mode of speaking from a powerful perception because I feel like the world needs to hear it, and this is an outlet for it. But I know too many black people, black friends of mine, who are hateful towards the white race. Not just police officers, the white race, because of the treatment that some of these bad apples that you spoke of, how they have done black people, when there are bad apples of all colors and all kinds in the world. So looking at you having to deal with that, did that change your perception of white people, or did it change your perception of police officers, and how so?
That is a very, very good question. And every day I say that, I find my answer, well, no, I'm not going to say I find it changing. I find answers to that question are ever evolving. So in terms of police officers, there was a point in time where I thought all police officers were bad. But then I have to realize I'm doing to them exactly what is being done to me.
Yeah.
And on a previous episode, I think I expressed that I don't like discriminating against other people because I know what it feels like to be discriminated. I know what it feels like to be marginalized. And I do have friends who are police officers, black men in blue uniforms, who are, in my opinion, great people. But however, I've never experienced them on the job. I've never experienced them in that capacity, so I can't speak to their level of professionalism. But somebody told a joke that, everybody makes mistakes at their job. Everybody, but I think in terms of law enforcement, there's less, in some positions, there's less wiggle room for mistakes.
I've said that joke came from Chris Rock, and I don't know if I've said it on an episode or if you just saw that joke, but he was saying that there's some jobs you just can't be bad at or have a bad day at. You can't be a pilot and have an off day.
You can't. And police officers are that's one of those professions. If you aren't built for that profession, then you shouldn't take the job. However, I do acknowledge that the issue is not necessarily the police officers themselves, it's the system. It comes down to the system that is in place, the training, the other protocols, the policies and procedures that govern those police officers, actually the legal world. I feel like if a police officer shoots an unarmed black person, hey, you should be treated as if I shot an unarmed black person. You shouldn't be given wiggle room because you're a police officer and, I thought he had a gun. Well, as my mama would say, forgive me for cursing, you thought you fought, but you shit.
Same thing.
You thought it was a fart, but baby, it ended up being a turd, and now you're sitting here smelling and shitty.
I really don't know how to take that whole comment.
I don't really know how to say it like that, but
she said you thought you fart, but you shit. Thinking gets you nothing. Like, don't think. Do better. No.
This is my last question. Petra, are you good?
No, I'm good.
This is my last question. Through all the things that we've gone through with Black Lives Matters and the movements, etc., do you think we are moving in a good direction, a slow direction, a standstill direction, or that we are going backwards?
Great question. We're moving in. We definitely had a lot of movement. Another thing that I do at down to the bankruptcy court is I'm the diversity, equity, and inclusion chair. So like this month is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So for each Heritage Month, I come up with these celebrations and things of whatnot. So I just say that to say that I'm very involved in like diversity, equity, and inclusion in my day-to-day activities at my job. One of the things that during the pandemic, the George Floyd riot made me, the riot made me smile. Like the coming to, or was it Mike Brown? I think it was George Floyd. The fact that you could look out into the streets and you saw not only black people championing the cause, but you saw the young whites. And anytime you want change, get the young white people involved. Yeah. There hasn't been, so we've been rioting and upset about it for years. But to piggyback off what I said earlier, back when, it happened to me, there was no social media. Now there's social media as a platform, everybody's discussing it. People are going live as it is happening. We know about it in real time. We're holding people accountable. We are joining forces. We are joining hands. This is revolutionary. So I think we are going in a great direction. One of my proudest moments is seeing people who didn't look like me fight for people who did look like me. And to understand that they understood it. Even they're saying, oh, you know what? Now that's some crazy shit. Look here, fellow white fella. That ain't right.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people really had a problem with that. White people fighting for, beside us for the rights, because they were blaming. That's why I asked the question, because there's so many black people that I know that are just hateful towards the race of white people instead of realizing that there's bad apples everywhere. So they had a big problem with people. I, like you, think that that's great. That's the vision that Martin Luther King Jr. wanted, where black people and white people work together. And so to me, how can anyone be mad at that kind of moment?
Yeah, and then how can I be mad at white people? But I'm being mad at white people because I think white people do not like me. Then now I'm marginalizing a group who I think is marginalizing me. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because now I'm treating white people different.
Which is why there's so much hate in the world.
And then they're treating me differently because I'm treating them different.
It's just
and I'm only seeing what they're giving me, but I'm not seeing the reason that they're giving it to me is because I put that in the universe. It becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy.
Well, there it is, the story of Blake. 3 episodes before we get out of here. I keep saying my last question, but I'm just going to say, what do you think of this experience? I'm going to put this, because usually I ask that question off camera, to be able to tell your story, to get it off your chest. I think it was a lot that you hit me with that I didn't know about, that was shocking to me, especially when you talk about the Myers. But what what did you think about this experience on the story up, to be able to do that and that platform to talk to people and tell them what you experienced?
Honestly, I loved it. I really, really did. I was nervous coming on because I honestly thought, I was like, well, my life has not been very interesting. I don't really know what I'm going to talk about. And then in our pre-meetings, I even asked you, I was like, well, what questions are you going to ask me? Can you give them to me right now so I can prepare answers? Because I'm one of those people, I like to be prepared for something. I don't want to go just off the cuff and just, I need to prepare now. At least have some bullet points, some notes to make sure I can fill up the spaces. I just thought, my life is not that interesting. Where am I going to pull these experiences from? But however, both of you have done an amazing job of keeping me talking about myself, which is something, I hate doing. So yes, and I love that I was able to share my story so publicly.
So you gonna send the link to your mama?
Able to help somebody else.
I was just about to say it. So you gonna share it with your mama?
You gonna mind your business?
Let me look at the math and I'll tell you.
Okay, so baby, the scores aren't in. What's your guess?
38-39.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
It depends on when your birthday is, but 38-39.
June 10th.
Yeah. I already knew.
I'm 38, but I claim 39.
I told you.
I told you I Nancy drew the shit out of this motherfucker, didn't I?
I'm too up for that. I went to the source.
Yeah, I basically gave it all to you.
I went to the source.
Right there. What was the source?
I was about to say something. Will, I went straight. Listen,
See, now, Will watching this, somebody in trouble.
I said he won't tell us his age. He was like, girl.
Patron, now that's just nasty.
Listen. You gotta get it by any means necessary.
By any. Now that was the tea. I couldn't lie.
I went straight to the source. After the first episode.
While I'm sitting here doing math, you ain't say shit. Anyway,
I didn't say nothing because I wanted.
Your contract will not be renewed for next season. You are not.
This your last episode. Just go ahead.
Well, I know a good lawyer if you have a contract.
Oh, okay. Well, you know they can take that shit at any time while you talking about people's funerals and shit.
Oh, yeah. I ain't need that. That wasn't no threat or nothing.
You ain't hear that from me.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Everybody, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that bell, do all that jazz, and let us know what you guys think about the story, what you guys think about the episode, what you think about the season, and if ever you want to be a guest here on The Story Of, hit us up and we'll get you guys on. As for now, we will see you guys next time.